Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a story that stretches across the heavens, literally. Imagine standing there, eyes squinting up at the bright blue sky, when suddenly, the mighty sun god Helios himself rides across the sky in his golden chariot. That's right, the god who controls the very sun. His golden horses galloping with blinding speed, lighting up the world below with every fiery stride, their hooves thundering across the sky. You would feel the heat of his chariot on your skin as he passes, the warmth radiating through the air. A god, the sun god Helios, traversing the heavens, commanding the sun itself. But here's the thing, you probably don't know what's coming. What you can't possibly know is that beneath the glory of the sun, a tragedy is unfolding, one set in motion by a single misguided promise. You see, even the gods make mistakes. Sometimes it only takes a moment of weakness, an impulsive promise, to set off a chain of events that no one can control. And trust me, this one's a doozy. You'll see what happens when even the gods falter in their decisions. A story of pride, trust, and tragedy. When arrogance and fate collide, the results can be catastrophic. So buckle up, because this journey is about to get wild, and you probably won't survive it. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. It's always interesting to see how far this journey reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into today's journey together. Helios, the mighty sun god, was not just any deity. He wasn't the god of random things like wine or harvest. No, Helios was the god of the sun itself. He didn't just control the sun, he was the sun. Each day, his golden chariot, drawn by 4 magnificent horses, made its way across the sky. From east to west, pulling the sun with it. Every sunrise and sunset was a testament to his power. Imagine how awe-inspiring it would be to witness that chariot, blazing across the heavens, lighting up the world. It wasn't a mere job for Helios. It was his divine purpose. Helios' task was essential, for without the sun, the world would be plunged into eternal darkness. Crops wouldn't grow. People would perish. Everything that relied on light and warmth would cease to exist. The gods trusted Helios with this vital responsibility because he was dependable, he was strong, he was consistent. But the gods never anticipated that something, or rather someone, would challenge that consistency. Helios didn't perform this task alone. His horses, bright and powerful, helped him pull the sun across the sky. But his real companion, the one who always kept him company, was his son Phaethon. Now Phaethon wasn't just any mortal child. No, he was Helios' flesh and blood, born from a divine union. He grew up hearing stories of his father's feats, of how the sun itself obeyed. Helios, the very personification of light. Can you imagine being a child of such a mighty god? Growing up with a sense of destiny so heavy that it feels like the weight of the world rests on your shoulders? But Phaethon's life wasn't easy. He had to live under the immense shadow of his father's power. How do you live up to something so extraordinary? Every time someone looked at Phaethon, they saw the sun god's son, a god in his own right. Yes, but one who was forever overshadowed by his father's grandeur. Phaethon wanted more than anything to prove himself, to show the world that he was worthy of his father's greatness. This is where things start to go wrong, though. Because you see, Phaethon didn't want to just be the son of the sun god. He wanted to be the sun god. He didn't want to hear about the grand tales of Helios riding across the sky. He wanted to ride the chariot himself. It wasn't enough to admire his father's strength from a distance. He wanted to control the very thing that made Helios so mighty, the chariot that pulled the sun across the sky. He wanted to feel that same power in his veins, that same connection to the heavens. But of course, Helios knew the risks. This wasn't just a joyride through the clouds. The chariot, though magnificent, was a dangerous, uncontrollable beast. The horses were wild, powerful, and unpredictable. Only Helios, with his centuries of experience, could keep them in check. A mortal man like Phaethon? He didn't stand a chance. But Phaethon, with the arrogance of youth, did not understand that. And so one day, filled with pride and determination, Phaethon approached his father with a bold request. He wanted to ride the chariot. He wanted to take his father's place, to prove once and for all that he too could control the sun. Helios, caught in a moment of weakness, didn't want to disappoint his son. Imagine the heartache of a father, faced with a child who wants nothing more than to make him proud. How could he deny him? And so Helios made a promise. He would grant Phaethon his wish. He would let him take the reins of the sun chariot. But he gave him one warning. The horses are dangerous. The path is treacherous. He must stay on course, or risk losing control. Phaethon, full of youthful confidence, believed he could handle it. He believed he was more than capable of doing what Helios had done for centuries. Historians still argue whether Helios should have granted his son this wish. Was it a father's love, or was it an unforgivable mistake? Was it a failure of Helios to see the danger in his son's pride, or was it simply inevitable? Well, you already know what happens next. It's the kind of decision that's easy to regret, but impossible to take back. So, with a few words of caution, Helios watched as his son took the reins of the chariot. The sun god, now just an observer, would soon find that the consequences of this decision would forever change the world and both of their fates. So there you are, watching from the heavens, feeling the cool breeze as you stand alongside the god of the sun. It's a moment of triumph for Phaethon, isn't it? He's finally about to prove himself, to step out of his father's shadow. The reins of the chariot are in his hands, the horses restless beneath him, their fiery eyes glowing with the same power that makes them gods of the sky. The golden chariot gleams, almost too bright for the mortal eye, and the entire universe waits for the moment when Phaethon sets off across the heavens. But oh boy, what you don't know is that this is the moment when everything starts to unravel. Helios, his heart filled with both pride and dread, watches helplessly as his son lifts the reins. There's a pang of regret already gnawing at him, but it's too late now. Phaethon is already at the helm, ready to ride into the sky. Now, imagine this. You're standing in the chariot, and the horses, each one more powerful than anything you could ever fathom, start to move. Their hooves strike the sky like thunder, and you feel the raw energy vibrating through the chariot. Phaethon, eyes wide with excitement, grips the reins tightly. The horses, however, are not like regular steeds. They are driven by a cosmic force, and controlling them is no simple task. But Phaethon, full of youthful arrogance, believes he can handle it. After all, he's the son of the sun god, right? At first, things seem perfect. The chariot pulls smoothly, and Phaethon's heart swells with pride. He can feel the power coursing through his veins as the horses gallop across the sky. There's nothing that could stop him, he thinks. But that's the thing about pride, isn't it? It blinds you. It convinces you that you're invincible, that you can handle anything, even the forces of the cosmos themselves. But as Phaethon pushes the horses faster, pulling the chariot further off course, something happens. The sky starts to shake. The horses, unrestrained by the wisdom and control of their father, veer off their path. They sense Phaethon's lack of experience, and they rebel. They pull wildly in all directions, their powerful limbs throwing the chariot out of control. You feel the violent swaying, the jerking motion as the chariot starts to spiral out of control. The sun, once steady in its course, now flickers and wavers like a candle in a gust of wind. Historians still argue whether Phaethon's mistake was the result of his lack of experience, or his arrogance. Was it simply the natural consequence of a child trying to match the power of a god, or was it fate, cruelly setting him on the path of destruction from the moment he was born? Well, we don't have the answers, do we? All we know for sure is that things are getting out of hand. Now, imagine the panic among the gods. The sky is shaking, the very stars seem to tremble in their orbits, and the earth below is caught in a firestorm. The sun, once a steady beacon of light, is now a chaotic, uncontrollable force. The gods can see what's happening, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. It's as if the universe itself is holding its breath, waiting for what comes next. Zeus, the king of the gods, is the first to react. He knows that if Phaethon is allowed to continue, the world will burn. Entire cities will be reduced to ash, forests will turn to dust, and oceans will boil under the heat. The earth itself, the great and enduring planet, will be destroyed by the recklessness of a single mortal. And so, with the power of the heavens at his command, Zeus makes the decision that will forever change the fate of Phaethon. The gods are watching, helpless, as Phaethon's ride continues to spiral out of control. But Zeus, with a look of grim determination, raises his mighty thunderbolt. With a single strike, he sends a bolt of lightning straight at Phaethon's chariot. The bolt hits, and in an instant, everything changes. There's a blinding flash of light, followed by an explosion that shakes the heavens themselves. Phaethon is thrown from the chariot, his body sent plummeting toward earth. The horses, freed from the chaotic reins, return to their rightful course. But the damage has already been done. The world below, once filled with life and promise, is now scarred by the reckless arrogance of a boy who thought he could control the sun. Phaethon falls, falling faster and faster, as his life flashes before his eyes. The sky, once his domain, is now his tomb. The sun's fiery path has been disrupted, and the earth below is left to suffer the consequences. And Helios? Well, he watches it all unfold, powerless to do anything but witness the tragedy that was set in motion by his own promise. His son, the boy he loved so dearly, is gone. The loss is unimaginable. And though Helios was once the sun god, in that moment, he feels the full weight of his mortality. He too is a father, helpless, grieving, and torn between love and the overwhelming weight of responsibility. Historians still debate whether Helios could have done anything differently. Should he have refused Phaethon's request from the start? Could he have done more to stop his son's dangerous quest for glory? Or was this the inevitable result of trying to fulfill the wishes of a child who didn't understand the limits of his own power? In the end, there's only one certainty. Phaethon's ride is over, and the world will never be the same again. Let's pause for a moment, shall we? Picture this. The sky once bright with the fiery chariot of the sun god has now gone dark. The fiery streaks that once painted the heavens are gone. The world, no longer basking in the constant warmth of the sun, is thrown into chaos. From the moment Phaethon fell, the earth began to suffer. In a flash, the once thriving lands are reduced to a smoking ruin, and the gods, well, they watch from their heavenly thrones, uncertain of how to proceed. There is no going back now. The damage is done, and no amount of divine power can undo it. But the real question remains: how does Helios cope with the aftermath? How does a father, witnessing the destruction of his son, reconcile with the pain of a promise made in good faith but fulfilled at such a high cost? The gods might be eternal, but in this moment, Helios is shattered and immortal, broken by the tragedy of his own creation. We return to Helios, standing in the sky, his chariot now empty, his heart heavy. The heat from his horse's hooves, which once brought warmth to the earth, now feels like a cruel joke. He watches as the flames that once consumed the sky dissipate into the darkened clouds, the chaos below a reflection of the storm inside him. There are no words to capture what he feels. His son, Phaethon, the boy who wanted to prove himself worthy, is gone, cast out from the heavens like a shooting star. The gods above may be eternal, but Helios knows this kind of loss is something he will carry for the rest of his days. But perhaps the most tragic part of it all isn't the fall itself. It's the realization that Phaethon never understood the weight of what he asked for. He never truly knew what it meant to control the sun, to ride the chariot across the sky. Helios had warned him, of course, but Phaethon's arrogance was a force of its own. You see, Phaethon wasn't the first to think that glory was within his reach. He was just another victim of that age-old trap, the belief that, because you're born into greatness, you can attain greatness without the sacrifice it demands. Historians still argue whether Phaethon could have been saved if Helios had been more firm, or if the gods had intervened sooner. But the truth is, nothing could have stopped it. Not when pride and destiny are tangled together. Not when the gods' choices are shaped by their own flaws. As Helios contemplates his son's fate, a deep sorrow settles over him. His heart, once blazing like the sun, now feels as cold as the darkened sky. The grief of a father who watched his son take a path that led to nothing but destruction is beyond measure. There's no redemption, no way to undo the damage. The sun, once a symbol of eternal life, now feels like a taunting reminder of the price Helios has paid for his own mercy. The earth, scorched in Phaethon's wake, will never truly recover. And neither will he. But the gods, in their immortal ways, move quickly to restore balance. They can't undo the damage, but they can try to prevent further destruction. The world, though scarred, is not beyond repair. The gods summon their might, and with a wave of their hands the earth begins to heal. Slowly, painfully, life starts to return to the lands. The rivers, once scalding under the sun's fiery wrath, begin to cool. The forests, burned to the ground, start to sprout new growth. The heavens themselves, once cracked and burning, are restored to their natural order. Yet in the aftermath, there's a lingering question. What is the true cost of a divine promise? Was it worth it for Helios to grant his son such a wish? Or was it an unwise act of indulgence, a mistake that could have been avoided? As time goes on, the gods debate whether Helios made the right choice, whether a father's love should ever outweigh the consequences of reckless pride. Historians still wonder, could Phaethon have been spared? Should Helios have kept his promise, or was this a lesson to the gods, one that would forever change their understanding of love and power? We'll never know. We can only look at the remnants of the world, the new growth rising from the ashes, and wonder what might have been. But for Helios, this is just the beginning of his personal hell. For as long as he rides the sky, pulling the sun across the heavens, he will carry the weight of Phaethon's death with him. His son, his beloved Phaethon, forever lost. The gods above might have forgiven him, but Helios knows deep down that the grief will never leave, and there it is, isn't it? The tragedy of it all. Phaethon didn't just fall from the heavens, he fell from the gods' grace. He wanted so desperately to prove himself, to become something more, but in the end, he learned too late that there are some forces in this universe that can't be controlled. The gods, with all their power, can't change the laws of fate, nor can they undo the choices they make in their moments of weakness. But that's the thing about gods, isn't it? They may be eternal, but they are not invulnerable. They are shaped by their choices, their pride, and their mistakes. And in Phaethon's fall, they are reminded of that painful truth. So there it is, Phaethon's fall. The sky has darkened, and the earth has been scarred by the reckless journey of a young man who simply wanted to prove himself. But here's the kicker: Helios, the father who granted that ill-fated wish, can't simply go back to his normal routine. He can't just wake up the next day, climb into his golden chariot, and set the sun on its daily course as if nothing ever happened. The weight of what has happened lingers. It has marked him as much as it has scarred the world below. The guilt is like a shadow, one that will follow him for the rest of eternity. Imagine, just for a moment, how Helios must feel. The chariot, that once seemed to glow with the power of the heavens, now feels like an empty, hollow vessel. The golden horses, once full of power and life, now stand silently, their eyes dull. They are as empty as Helios feels. He moves across the sky day after day, in a rhythm he knows well. The sun rises, it sets. It rises again. It's the same, but it's not. It never will be. The gods, of course, try to move on. They have their own duties, their own responsibilities. They were, after all, still gods, immortal, all-powerful, and able to weather this loss. The earth, in time, would recover from the scorch of Phaethon's reckless ride. The lands would heal, the rivers would run cool again, and the cities would rebuild. The gods were content with this, but not Helios. Not the sun god. For him, the punishment would last much longer. Historians still argue whether Helios ever fully recovered from his son's death. Could the weight of such loss, such regret, ever truly leave a god? Was he forever doomed to carry that guilt, even as he rose each day to deliver light to the world? Some say that he did. That, with time, Helios eventually accepted that his son's death was a consequence of fate, and that it wasn't solely his responsibility. Others, though, argue that Helios' guilt never truly faded. That, in some ways, it drove him to become more distant, more detached. After all, how could you continue to give light to a world that took away everything you loved? How could you be the one to shine, day in and day out, when all you wanted to do was to disappear into the dark? But even as Helios struggles with this deep, almost unnameable sorrow, the gods do their best to move forward. They have their own affairs to deal with. Zeus, the king of the gods, takes his place back on his throne. He goes back to his role as the wielder of thunder, the enforcer of divine justice. The rest of the pantheon continues with their duties, unaffected by the events that transpired. Yet, there's a deeper undercurrent that runs through the gods now. It's a reminder, a lesson in the cost of pride and the dangerous allure of ambition. They, too, have witnessed how even the most powerful of them can falter. How one small promise, one moment of weakness, can unravel the lives of mortals and gods alike. And while they may continue their existence as immortals, they are forever marked by what happened in the aftermath of Phaethon's tragic fall. But what about the earth? What about the world that suffered so much because of one mortal's arrogance? The answer isn't easy, because the scars remain. Sure, life returned and nature began to heal. The seas were no longer boiling under the sun's heat. The trees began to grow back, the fields to turn green again. People went about their lives, unaware of the celestial turmoil that had threatened to wipe them out. The world continued to spin on its axis as it always had. But there's something intangible that has changed. Historians still debate whether Phaethon's actions were a warning, or whether it was simply a result of fate. Was it his pride, or was it his yearning for approval that led him to such an end? Some believe it was arrogance that drove him, while others say it was his desire to prove himself worthy of his father's love. Either way, the result was the same: devastation. And the gods who should have been the ones with the answers were the gods, left with nothing but silence. Helios, forever marked by his son's death, continues his journey each day. He pulls the sun across the sky, just as he always has. But it's different now. Every time the sun rises, there's a flicker of memory, a flash of Phaethon's face, of his youthful ambition. And in that moment, Helios wonders, was it all worth it? Was the price of that promise too high? Or, more hauntingly, did Phaethon's death teach him something that no god had ever truly understood before? For the gods, the truth is this: even in their infinite power, there are things beyond their control. There are forces, fates, that no immortal can alter. A single promise, made out of love or pride, can change everything. Helios might have given the world light, but he had to live with the darkness that followed. And that, perhaps, is the greatest tragedy of all. There's something undeniably tragic about the slow march of time. The way the past fades into the background, and yet, those pivotal moments like Phaethon's fall linger in the present, casting a shadow on everything that comes after. For Helios, the passage of time didn't offer him the peace it so often grants mortals. His heart, forever bound by the agony of that promise, remained heavy as he continued his eternal task. Each day, the sun rose and set, its journey controlled by his steady hands, but the weight of the loss didn't lessen. Imagine the relentlessness of that existence, the feeling of doing something so grand, so powerful, day after day, yet each moment is tainted by a single irreversible decision. Helios was bound to the sky. His purpose, pulling the sun across the heavens, was never-ending. But he couldn't escape the grief. You've probably heard it said that time heals all wounds. Well, Helios would beg to differ. Time may have healed the scars on the earth, but the scars on his soul? They remained as permanent as the sun's path across the sky dot. It wasn't just the grief that wore him down. It was the crushing realization that he had not just lost a son, but had unwittingly sentenced him to death. You see, Helios had always seen himself as a figure of immense power, an eternal god who commanded the heavens with a mere flick of his wrist. But in the wake of Phaethon's death, he understood something far more profound. Control is an illusion. He had given his son the reins of the sun's chariot, thinking that with guidance, Phaethon could handle it. But it wasn't just about controlling the chariot, it was about understanding the consequences of power. The fragile balance between control and chaos. The gods, in their endless wisdom, often talk about fate. They speak of it as though it's something that can be shaped and understood. But for Helios, fate wasn't a distant concept. It was a tangible force that had knocked on his door, disguised as his son's ambition. Historians still argue about whether fate truly had a hand in Phaethon's demise, or whether it was simply the tragic result of a mortal's arrogance. Some say that the gods' interference was inevitable, that once Phaethon took the reins, there was no way things could end well. Others believe that Helios' own actions, his own decision to trust his son, set the stage for the disaster. But none of that really matters now, does it? The gods can debate fate and destiny all they want, but the reality is that Helios had to live with the consequences of his actions. And in a way, it's hard to escape the feeling that the gods, for all their wisdom, are just as vulnerable as mortals. They might live forever, but they too make mistakes. They too are susceptible to the consequences of their choices. Helios, in his endless wisdom, had once thought that the sun's journey across the sky was a simple task. The horses, the chariot, the heat, those were his tools, and he knew them like the back of his hand. But after Phaethon's fall, he began to see the sun's journey differently. It wasn't just about power or control. It was about balance. The world and the gods who controlled it existed in a delicate harmony. When one force is thrown off, everything else is affected. Helios realized that it wasn't just about controlling the sun. It was about understanding the balance that holds the universe together. It's easy to see Helios as just another god, a powerful figure whose only task was to pull the sun across the sky. But his tragedy, the grief he carries with him every day, is a reminder that power alone is not enough. Control is only an illusion. There are things in this world, things in this universe, that no god can control. And Helios, in his deep sorrow, has come to understand that better than anyone. As the days pass, Helios continues his journey across the sky. The sun rises and sets, just as it always has. But there's something different now, something haunting, about the way he moves. The warmth of the sun no longer feels as comforting. It feels like a reminder of a promise made and a life lost. Historians still wonder if Helios could have done things differently. If he had refused Phaethon's request, if he had been firmer, would things have turned out differently? Would the world have been spared the destruction that followed? It's a question without an answer, a question that only adds to the weight of Helios' guilt. But maybe that's the point of it all. Maybe the gods, in their eternal wisdom, are meant to experience this kind of sorrow. To understand that power is not everything. To realize that sometimes the greatest lesson comes from the hardest of losses. And so, Helios moves on, day after day, knowing that he can never undo the past. But as he looks down upon the earth, he sees the world healing. The fires have cooled. The seas have calmed. Life has begun again. And perhaps, just perhaps, that is his redemption. Not in the act of forgiving himself, but in the knowledge that the world, much like his heart, is capable of healing. But for Helios, the journey continues. There is no true peace, no final redemption. Only the endless ride of the sun as it rises and sets in a cycle as eternal as the gods themselves. Now let's slow things down a bit. It's been a rough ride, hasn't it? All the drama, the power struggles, the rising and falling of gods, the tragic loss of a son. And through it all, Helios, despite being an immortal god of light, can't seem to escape the darkness of his own grief. The sun still rises every day, and Helios is still at the helm, pulling the chariot across the heavens. But we both know that the light he brings now isn't quite the same as it once was. There's a hollowness to it, a weariness that clings to every sunrise and every sunset. But here's the thing, life goes on. Even in the face of unimaginable loss, the world keeps turning. The earth continues its endless cycle of growth and decay, and the gods keep to their divine tasks, as indifferent to the passage of time as the stars themselves. The gods are eternal, but they are also shaped by their choices. And sometimes it's those choices, the ones made in the heat of emotion, the ones that come with the best of intentions, that lead to consequences so far-reaching that even the gods cannot undo them. Helios, however, doesn't have the luxury of moving on easily. While the world heals from Phaethon's tragic fall, Helios is still left to pick up the pieces of his own heart. He has no choice but to keep going. The sun must rise. The sky must be filled with light, whether he's ready for it or not. This is his duty, his divine responsibility. And as a god, he must carry it out, day after day, even when the weight of it feels unbearable. But even in the midst of his sorrow, there's a flicker of something in Helios. A small ember, deep within him, that refuses to die. It's the same ember that once burned brightly in Phaethon's heart. The same ember that drove the young man to reach for greatness. In some ways, Phaethon's death hasn't just shattered Helios, it has reignited something in him, something he thought was long gone. A reminder of what it means to live, to truly live, beyond the shadows of regret and guilt. It's a hard pill to swallow, I know. It's easy to feel sorry for Helios. He's a god after all, and the world continues to spin whether he's happy or not. But let's not forget that gods, despite their immortality, are not immune to the weight of their choices. They are not immune to the heartbreak that comes with love, loss, and the consequences of pride. Helios may have been the sun god, but in this moment, he's just a father who lost everything because he couldn't say no to his son's request. The gods can debate fate all they want, but Helios has learned something that they can never understand, that sometimes the greatest power lies not in what you control, but in what you are willing to let go of. In that moment, Helios learned the hard truth that he couldn't control everything, not even the sun. And that's the part of the story that really hits home for me. You can be the most powerful being in the universe, but you can still fall. You can still make a mistake. And in the end, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is face the consequences and learn from them. But Helios doesn't have that luxury. He has to keep pulling the sun, day after day, just as he always has. The sky must be filled with light. The world must continue, and so he does it. He pulls the sun across the sky, even as his heart remains heavy. But with each passing day, he learns a little more about himself, about his flaws, about the limits of his power, and about the delicate balance between love and loss. Helios' journey across the heavens, though endless, is not without purpose. Every sunrise, every sunset, is a reminder of the lessons he's learned, and the lessons that he has yet to learn. Maybe, just maybe, there's something redemptive in all of this. Maybe in the end, Helios will find peace, not in his ability to control the sun, but in his acceptance of what he cannot control. And so, as the days go on, the sky remains lit with the sun's steady path. But it's not the same sun as before. It's a sun that carries with it the weight of loss, but also the possibility of renewal. Helios, forever marked by his son's death, continues his ride. The chariot pulls across the sky once more, just as it always has. But now, when you look up at the sun, you might just notice something different. A flicker of something deeper, something born not just of light, but of sorrow, growth, and the understanding that even gods are capable of change. Historians still argue over Helios' fate, whether he ever truly recovered from the loss of Phaethon, or whether he simply learned to live with it. Some say that, over time, he found a new sense of purpose. Others say that the weight of that grief never left him. Either way, one thing is clear. The story of Helios and Phaethon is not just a tale of gods, but a tale of human struggle. A tale of pride, love, and the consequences of our choices. So, as the sun rises and sets once again, remember this. Even the greatest among us are not immune to the cost of ambition, to the weight of decisions made in the heat of the moment. And sometimes, the greatest power we can wield is not the ability to control the world, but the ability to accept what we cannot change. As we settle into this darker part of the story, it's important to think about what Helios has left. The sun continues to rise, but it's hard to ignore the shadows that have crept into his heart. What was once a divine mission, a sacred task, carried out with pride, has become a hollow routine. The weight of his actions, the irreversible decision that led to Phaethon's fall, presses heavily on him. You can imagine how every sunrise now feels different for him, can't you? Every time he climbs into his chariot, there's a momentary hesitation. His horses, the same 4 steeds he's always trusted, now seem almost alien to him, as though they carry with them the memory of the tragedy. Phaethon's fall wasn't just a loss for Helios. It was a loss for the world. The earth itself, after all, had nearly perished under the reckless ambition of a mortal. The gods could restore balance to the skies and the heavens, but the scars on the earth would be harder to heal. Nature itself had been marred by the erratic path of the sun. Whole regions had been burned, cities reduced to ash. The landscape, once lush and green, was now marked by the memory of fire and devastation. It wasn't just Helios' heart that carried the weight of grief. The world did too. And while life began to grow back new shoots of grass, poking through the charred earth, rivers cooling to their normal temperature, the scars were still there. For Helios, these scars were reminders of his son's arrogance and his own inability to stop it. But there's a strange sort of comfort in routine. Even in the darkest of times, we humans, and gods apparently, tend to gravitate toward what's familiar. And while Helios can never escape the tragedy of his son's fall, there is something in the rhythm of his task that offers a sense of purpose. Every day, he climbs into his chariot and pulls the sun across the sky. No matter what he's feeling, inside, the world below still looks to him. The earth needs light. The people need warmth. The sun has to rise. And so, despite the grief that gnaws at him, Helios continues. But it's not all dark, is it? The sun that Helios carries with him still brings life. It still nourishes the plants, warms the hearts of men, and gives the world its rhythm. There's a bittersweet beauty in the fact that, despite his grief, Helios still holds the power to create light in a world that was nearly consumed by darkness. Every sunrise in its way is a small act of redemption. He may not be able to undo the damage, but he can keep the world turning. He can remind the earth that, even in the aftermath of destruction, life persists. It's fascinating, really, how something so painful, so tragic, can still fuel something good. Helios' suffering has become part of the world's ongoing renewal. You see, sometimes in our darkest moments, we find the strength to carry on. It's not because we forget what happened or because we want to forget. It's because the world demands it. The world needs light just as much as Helios needs to continue. And so the sun rises again and again and again. Historians still debate the nature of Helios' role in this story. Was he simply a passive victim of fate, or did he, in some way, shape the outcome of his son's death? Could he have done something differently? Could he have stopped Phaethon from making that fatal decision? Some argue that Helios was bound by his promise, that the love he had for his son compelled him to give Phaethon what he wanted. Others believe that Helios' own pride, his desire to see his son succeed, led him to make the wrong decision. And yet others point to the larger forces at play: fate, destiny, and the inevitable consequences of arrogance. But here's the thing, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe the true lesson here is that, no matter how powerful we are, we're all vulnerable. We all make mistakes. Even gods, even those who control the very sun, can falter. Helios didn't intend for his son to die. He didn't want the world to burn. But in the end, those were the consequences of a promise made out of love. A promise that cost him more than he could have ever imagined. And that's where Helios' story becomes something universal. It's not just about gods or immortals or chariots. It's about the way we all carry the weight of our choices. Sometimes we make decisions we believe are right, even when we know the risks. Sometimes we love so fiercely that we're willing to make sacrifices, even when we know the cost might be too high. And sometimes we're forced to live with the consequences, no matter how unbearable they may seem. It's in the human condition, whether we're gods or mortals. We all face choices that shape our lives, choices that can change the world around us. For Helios, the sun still rises. It's not the same as it once was. The fire is there, but it's muted by the sorrow of his loss. And yet, in that fire, there's a kind of redemption, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, there is still light. Even after loss, there is still the potential for renewal. The world may have been scorched, but life, as it always does, will find a way to rise again. It may be a slow process, painful even, but the sun still rises. And Helios? Well, he keeps on driving it, through all the grief, through all the regret, through all the questions that may never have answers. But in that endless ride, there's a kind of peace, isn't there? Not the kind of peace that erases pain, but the kind that comes from accepting the world as it is and continuing, regardless of what's been lost. The days continue to stretch out in front of Helios, each one a relentless echo of the last. The sun rises and the sun sets, and Helios, though still burdened by his grief, continues his daily chore, now weighed down by more than just the chariot. With every step of his horses, Helios carries the memory of Phaethon's tragic ride, the image of his son falling from the sky, burning through the heavens. But what happens when the passage of time doesn't soften the sting of a loss? When every rise and fall of the sun feels like a reminder that things are broken and cannot be fixed? You might think that after all this time, Helios would have found some kind of closure. After all, the world is healed. The earth has begun to grow. Back new life sprouting where there was once fire and ash. But for Helios, healing isn't as simple as that. Because grief doesn't work on a timetable. It's not something that fades with the seasons. It's something that embeds itself deep into your bones, something you carry with you no matter how far you go, and for a god, perhaps it's even worse. Because immortality doesn't mean invulnerability, and it doesn't mean the pain ever truly goes away. It just changes. It grows into something else. Helios' grief has morphed into a kind of quiet, lonely acceptance. But that doesn't mean he's free of it. He still sees Phaethon in his mind, still hears the echoes of his son's voice calling out for him, asking for that impossible chance to drive the chariot. The memory is almost like a song on repeat, a melody that plays in his mind with no end, no resolution. Every time he pulls the reins, every time his horses start their great gallop across the sky, it's as if he's reliving that moment over and over again. He's not simply a god delivering light. He's a father trapped in time, forever bound to his decision, to his love, and to the pain that followed. It's not an easy thing to witness. Even the gods, in their divine splendor, are still bound by the consequences of their choices. They cannot escape their own mistakes, no matter how much power they wield. And while the world below moves on, Helios remains stuck in a cycle of endless repetition, each new day a continuation of the last, with no resolution in sight. There's something almost tragic about that, don't you think? But if there's one thing the gods understand, it's that time doesn't wait for anyone, not even them. The earth continues to spin, the seasons change, and life goes on. And perhaps that's the cruelest part of it all. While Helios remains tethered to his grief, the world, in its relentless way, continues to move forward. It doesn't stop. It doesn't pause for a moment of reflection. It simply keeps turning, as if the sun's path is the only thing that matters. But what about the heart of the one who controls it? At times the gods will glance down at Helios with sympathy, understanding the weight he carries. They know that he is not just a god of light. He is a father, and fathers, gods or mortals, are bound by a love that defies the boundaries of life and death. They know that Helios is paying the price for the mistake he made when he granted Phaethon the reins of the chariot. And though they may offer their silent condolences, the gods also know something else. Helios will never truly let go. And perhaps that's what makes him different. While other gods move on from their mistakes, Helios remains rooted in them. He carries the burden of his decision with him every day. And in that way, perhaps Helios understands something deeper than the other gods. Maybe the greatest power is not in the ability to move forward without consequence, but in the willingness to bear the weight of your choices, no matter how heavy they may become. Historians argue whether Helios was forever marked by his son's death, or if, over time, he was able to regain a sense of peace. Some believe that he simply learned to live with the sorrow, like any mortal would. Others argue that the grief was never truly overcome, that it simmered just beneath the surface of his radiant exterior. But one thing is certain: Helios' tragedy did not just change him, it changed the gods as well. They saw the fragility of their existence, the way their decisions could ripple through the mortal world and create consequences that even immortals could not escape. And so, Helios continues his ride across the sky. The sun rises and sets, a constant in an ever-changing world. But now, when you look up at that blazing orb, it's hard not to wonder if you're seeing something more than just the light. Maybe you're seeing the weight of Helios' soul, the reflection of a father's love, and the haunting memory of a promise made and broken. The gods may rule the heavens, but they too are subject to the forces of love, loss, and the eternal struggle to make sense of the world they shape. And that's the most human thing about them, isn't it? They may wear the faces of gods, but they too must carry the same burdens as those they watch over. Helios might be the god of the sun, but in his heart, he is also a father, one who has lost something irreplaceable. And perhaps that's why the sun continues to rise. Not just because it has to, but because, somewhere deep inside, Helios knows that he must carry on. For the world, for his son, and for himself. Time keeps its indifferent march, relentless as always. The world below has moved on, as it always does, without pause for any god's grief. The forests, once scorched and barren, have grown thick again with life. The rivers, too, have regained their calm, their waters flowing once more in tranquil harmony. The cities that were once reduced to ash have rebuilt, their structures rising from the charred earth, now stronger and more resilient than ever. The world is healing, slowly but surely, recovering from the fiery wrath that once threatened to consume it. And yet, up in the heavens, Helios remains the same. His chariot, still golden and gleaming, travels the same path across the sky. The horses, still mighty, gallop with the same power. But for Helios, every mile is a reminder of the promise that led to the tragedy of his son. What's the cost of immortality, I wonder? The gods, despite their endless power, can't outrun the consequences of their choices. No matter how much they rule, no matter how far they stretch their dominion across the universe, they still face the same timeless burden that we do, the weight of their actions. Helios, despite his place in the heavens, is no different. He bears the weight of his choices every day, every moment, each time he looks up at the sky. Every sunrise and sunset is a reminder of his son's fall and the price of his love. But there's something else too. Something that Helios doesn't realize at first. The world below, though it's healing, has also changed in a way that even the gods cannot fully understand. You see, the earth, though it recovers, has not forgotten. The scars are still there, hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be revealed. Every tree that grows, every river that flows, is a testament to the struggle of rebirth. But beneath it all is the knowledge that the world itself is more fragile than anyone wants to admit. The gods, for all their power, cannot control the ebb and flow of life, the cycles of death and renewal. The earth knows this truth, perhaps better than any god. It knows that no matter how much the world may heal, it will never forget the cost of the sun's power. Helios, still carrying the grief of his son's death, begins to see this for himself. The sun no longer seems as bright as it once did. There's a heaviness to it now, as though the weight of his mistakes has tainted everything it touches. His chariot, once so full of life and glory, now feels like a hollow shell. Even the mighty horses, once so full of power, seem a little less eager to take on their task. Each step, each gallop across the sky, feels like a painful reminder of what's been lost. And yet, Helios keeps moving forward, one day after another, as he always has. He has no choice. The world still needs him. The sun still needs to rise. But here's the thing. As Helios continues his endless task, something unexpected happens. He begins to understand the true cost of power. It's not just the ability to control the sun or the heavens. It's the realization that every action, every decision, carries a consequence that echoes far beyond the moment. Helios didn't just lose his son. He lost the part of himself that believed he could control everything. The sun may still rise, but now it's a symbol of both life and loss, power and humility. The world needs Helios, but Helios is beginning to realize that he needs something more than just the task before him. He needs forgiveness. But that's not something that comes easily for gods. There's something poetic in all of this. The gods, despite their immortal nature, still face the human struggle of forgiveness, redemption, and self-acceptance. It's easy to think of them as untouchable, impervious to the kinds of emotions that plague mortals. But the truth is, Helios, despite his godhood, is just as vulnerable as anyone else. He too must reckon with the consequences of his actions. He too must face the reality that no matter how much he controls, there are things beyond his grasp. His love for Phaethon, his promise to his son, his decision to allow him to drive the chariot, these things have shaped not only his fate, but the fate of the world. And in some ways, that realization is as heavy as the sun itself. Helios is not without hope, not entirely. You see, as time passes, he begins to find something in the steady rhythm of his task. The sun may rise with the same weight of loss, but it also rises with the possibility of something more. Every day, as the sun climbs higher into the sky, it carries with it a promise, not of redemption, not of undoing the past, but of moving forward. It's not about forgetting the pain or pretending it doesn't exist. It's about finding a way to live with it, to let it shape you rather than consume you. Helios may never fully recover from his loss, but he can still offer light to the world below. And that, in itself, is a form of redemption. Historians still debate whether Helios found peace in the end. Some say he did. Some say that after centuries of carrying his grief, he learned to let it go. Others argue that Helios never fully forgave himself. Perhaps that's the point, though. Perhaps Helios' story isn't about finding perfect peace or ultimate redemption. Maybe it's about the process of living with your choices, of accepting that sometimes the greatest power lies in the ability to keep moving forward, even when you don't know where the path will lead. The sun rises every day, but for Helios, each rise is a new beginning, a new chance to find meaning in a world that has changed forever. In the end, it's not about the gods. It's not about their immortality or their power. It's about their humanity, their ability to love, to lose, and to learn. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most human thing of all. The days stretch on, one after the other, blending together in an endless cycle. As Helios continues his daily task of guiding the sun across the sky, his heart remains tethered to the memory of his son, Phaethon. Every rise of the sun, every descent back into the horizon, carries the weight of a promise that was both a gift and a curse. As the chariot rolls across the heavens, Helios can feel the deep ache in his soul. The path is familiar, yet each journey now feels like an endless loop, a repetitive reminder of what has been lost. But here's the thing: something begins to change, however subtly, in the way Helios carries himself. It's not just the passing of time. It's something deeper, something that can't be so easily explained. You see, despite all the grief, despite the eternal sorrow that follows him like a shadow, there's a flicker of understanding that begins to take root in Helios' heart. For all his power, for all the might of his son and chariot, he has come to realize that there is no true control over the forces of life and death, fate and consequence. No matter how hard you try, you can't escape the inevitable. This is a hard truth for any god to swallow, especially one who has spent eternity wielding such immense power. Helios had always believed in the strength of his control over the sun, over the natural world, but his son's tragic fate has shattered that illusion. The ride of the sun, once so full of purpose, now feels more like a penitence, a daily task that he must carry out, not because it's his duty, but because it is the only thing that remains constant in his world. The earth needs light, and Helios, though broken by grief, still carries the responsibility of providing it. But now, the light he brings is tinged with loss, a quiet reflection of the emotional scars he can never heal. The world has, of course, continued on. The cities that were once reduced to ash after Phaethon's reckless ride have risen anew. They've rebuilt, stronger than before, as if the land itself has accepted the destruction and moved on. The earth has healed, its wounds long since scabbed over, but the scars remain. The sky, still illuminated by the sun, holds a deeper meaning now, one that Helios knows all too well. The earth has forgiven him in some ways, but he is not sure he will ever forgive himself. And yet, there is something profound in the persistence of nature, isn't there? The earth, the oceans, the sky, they may bend, but they do not break. In many ways, they mirror Helios himself. He too bends under the weight of his mistakes, under the constant reminder of his son's fall, but he does not break. No matter how heavy the burden, no matter how painful the loss, Helios continues to rise day after day, just as the sun does. The gods above might have the luxury of moving on, of leaving the past behind, but Helios cannot. His past, his son's fate, it will follow him for as long as he pulls the sun across the sky. It's here, in the quiet acceptance of his grief, that Helios begins to find something else, something like peace. It's not a peace that erases the past. It's not a peace that grants him freedom from the consequences of his choices. But it's a peace in the knowledge that life, in all its unpredictable chaos, must continue. The world needs light, and Helios is the one who provides it. And as long as he can keep offering that light, even in the midst of his pain, there is a kind of redemption in it. It's not the redemption he expected. It's not the closure he thought he would find. But it's enough. Historians still argue over whether Helios ever fully recovered from the loss of Phaethon. Some believe he did. Some believe that with time, his heart softened and he found a way to move forward. But others, those who see the subtle signs of his eternal sorrow, suggest that Helios never truly let go of his son. His love for Phaethon is as eternal as his duty to the sun, and that love has shaped everything he does, every moment of his existence. But there's beauty in that, isn't there? The idea that love, whether for a son, a child, a person, endures beyond death. It endures even when the pain seems unbearable, when the world around you continues to move, indifferent to your suffering. For Helios, love is not just a fleeting feeling. It's a force that endures, a light that continues to shine, even when he himself feels lost in the darkness. There's something deeply human in that, even though Helios is no mortal. He may be a god, but he knows what it's like to suffer the weight of love and loss. And through that suffering, he finds a way to keep moving forward. Not because he wants to, but because the world, the sun, and the people who depend on him need him too. The sun, of course, continues to rise. Every day, without fail, the chariot pulls across the sky, carrying with it the light of the world. But for Helios, that light now carries something else. The memory of Phaethon, the loss, the love, and the quiet understanding that, sometimes, the most powerful thing a god can do is accept what cannot be changed, and find meaning in the journey that remains. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Helios rises once again, his chariot pulled by the same powerful horses as it has been for millennia. The sun climbs higher into the sky, bringing warmth to the world below. But for Helios, each sunrise feels like both a victory and a reminder. The earth, alive and vibrant beneath him, thrives, but he remains haunted by the shadow of his son's fall. You see, grief isn't a thing that passes with time. It's a thing that changes shape, deepens, and becomes part of you. For Helios, his sorrow has woven itself into the fabric of his existence, just as much as his role as the sun god. The two are inseparable, but something has shifted. It's subtle, almost imperceptible, but it's there. The relentless, painful grief that once defined every day has started to merge with something else, something unexpected. Helios has come to realize that, despite the darkness that shadows his heart, there is still light within him. Perhaps it is not the same brilliant light that once flared with the power of a god, but it is light nonetheless. For the first time in a long while, Helios finds himself contemplating the meaning of his journey. You might think that a god immortal and powerful would have all the answers, wouldn't you? But the truth is, immortality doesn't come with wisdom. It's just endless time. And in that time, even the gods question their purpose. Why rise every day? Why endure the endless task of carrying the sun across the sky when all you feel inside is loss? But that's the thing about Helios. He knows that the world needs him. The earth needs his light, whether he is ready to give it or not. You can almost imagine him now, riding across the sky, pulling the sun in a steady, practiced rhythm. He moves with the precision of an ancient task, the same movements repeated day after day. And yet, even in the midst of his routine, there's a flicker of something deeper, a flicker of resolve. Maybe the loss of Phaethon can never be undone, but perhaps there is something that can be salvaged from it. Perhaps, by continuing his journey, Helios can offer something more than just light. He can offer hope. He can remind the world that, even in the deepest sorrow, life continues to move forward. But that's not an easy truth to face, is it? The idea that, even in the face of unimaginable grief, there is something to be found. For so long, Helios struggled to reconcile the endless pain with his duties. He wondered if it was even possible to move forward, to accept the loss without forgetting it. And then, as if by some cosmic twist of fate, he realized that perhaps moving forward wasn't about forgetting at all. It was about carrying the grief, not as a burden, but as a part of his existence. A part of the journey. The gods, with all their wisdom, often fail to understand the complexities of life and death. But Helios has learned something over the centuries. He has learned that power doesn't lie in the ability to control everything. It lies in the acceptance of what can't be controlled. The earth, after all, is not controlled by the gods. It is shaped by forces far beyond their reach. And yet, it continues to thrive, to grow, to move forward. The world still needs Helios. And perhaps in some small way, he needs the world too. The rhythm of his ride, the routine of guiding the sun, is what keeps him anchored. It is not the sun itself, but the act of giving it, of sharing his light with the world, that brings meaning to his existence. And so, every day, he rises and sets the sun, one more time, and then again. Not because he wants to, but because it is the only thing he can do. Historians still debate whether Helios found peace after Phaethon's death. Was there redemption for the sun god, or was his sorrow simply part of his eternal punishment? Some say that he learned to accept his grief, while others claim that he remained forever scarred by it. But there's a deeper truth in both views. Helios, like any mortal or immortal, cannot simply forget. He cannot just move on from a loss that has shaped his life. But he can learn to live with it, to make it part of who he is. And in that acceptance, there's a quiet redemption, but there's something more to it. Something that the gods, in their eternal wisdom, often forget. It's not about whether Helios forgives himself for what happened with Phaethon. It's about whether the world forgives him. And in a way, the earth has done just that. The trees have regrown, the rivers have calmed, and life continues, much as it always has. The world moves forward, despite the mistakes of its rulers. The earth, in its boundless ability to heal, offers Helios something that no god could, the opportunity to begin again, every single day. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all, that no matter how much we may falter, no matter how much we may hurt, there's always a new sunrise. There is always a chance to continue, to find light again, even when the darkness feels all-consuming. For Helios, the light he shares with the world may never be the same as it was before, but it is still light. And that light, however dimmed by sorrow, still has the power to guide. So, as Helios rides across the sky once more, you can't help but feel a small sense of peace for him. Not because he's healed, but because he has found a way to keep moving forward. He has learned to accept the pain, to embrace the grief, and to carry it with him as he moves through eternity. And in that acceptance, there's a kind of redemption, a quiet, humble redemption that only the gods, in their infinite wisdom and eternal sorrow, can truly understand. As Helios continues his endless journey across the sky, a strange thing begins to happen. There's no grand revelation, no dramatic shift in the cosmos, but something subtle, almost imperceptible, changes within him. It's as if the grief he has carried for so long, the weight of his son's death and the crushing weight of guilt, is gradually transforming into something else. It's not that the grief has gone away. It's still there, deep in his heart, nestled beside his duty. But now, instead of consuming him, it has become a part of the rhythm of his existence. Every time the horse's hooves strike the heavens, every time the sun rises in its magnificent golden blaze, Helios feels that pang of loss, yes. But he also feels a renewed sense of purpose. It's as if the task of carrying the sun, his eternal duty, has taken on a new meaning. No longer is it just a responsibility or a routine. It is a way for him to keep his son's memory alive, to honor the love he had for Phaethon, and to live with the consequences of the choices he made. It's not an easy thing to live with, is it? The knowledge that your actions, no matter how well intended, have changed everything. That your love, your desire to see your child succeed, has led to destruction and sorrow. It's hard to accept that no matter how powerful you are, there are things beyond your control. But in that acceptance, there's a quiet strength. A strength that Helios is starting to find, not in the power of the sun he commands, but in the power to endure, to keep moving forward despite the weight of it all. But it's also important to note that this shift in Helios is not a sudden thing. It's not an overnight transformation. It's a slow, steady process, like the passage of time itself. The gods, immortal and eternal, often seem like they are above such things. Their lives are endless, after all, and they are seen as unchanging, invulnerable to the kind of emotional turmoil that afflicts mortals. But Helios, in his grief, is beginning to understand something that even the gods don't always grasp. The true nature of endurance. It's not about the ability to be unbroken. It's about the ability to live with the cracks, to keep moving despite them, and to find meaning in the journey, even when the destination is uncertain. The world below continues its never-ending cycle. The earth, once scorched and barren, is now teeming with life again. The forests have grown thick with new leaves, the rivers run clear and full, and the cities that were once destroyed by Phaethon's reckless ride have flourished into vibrant, bustling places once more. And yet, even as the world heals, the memory of what happened remains. The scars may have faded from the landscape, but they still linger in the hearts of those who remember. Helios, despite the passage of time, still carries the weight of the past with him. And perhaps that's the most profound truth of all, that, even when the world moves on, we are never truly free from the consequences of our actions. We carry them with us, woven into the very fabric of who we are. And just as the earth has healed, so too must Helios find a way to heal, not by forgetting what has happened, but by accepting it as part of his eternal existence. It's a paradox, isn't it? To move forward, you must first confront the past. To find peace, you must first make peace with the pain. And Helios, in his infinite wisdom, begins to understand this. He knows that the loss of Phaethon will never fade. It will always be with him, just as the sun is always with him. But that's not a curse, is it? It's a testament to love. A love that doesn't fade with time, a love that endures, even when the world around it changes. Perhaps that is the true nature of immortality. It's not about living forever without pain or regret. It's about learning to live with those things. It's about finding a way to continue, to rise again, even when you're broken, even when the world feels like it's slipping through your fingers. The gods may not age, they may not die, but they too must learn to cope with the weight of their decisions. They must learn to find meaning, not in perfection, but in the journey, however painful it may be. Historians still debate whether Helios found redemption. Was his grief truly healed, or did it simply become something he learned to live with? Some believe that in the endless passage of time, Helios found peace in his routine, in the simple act of continuing to carry the sun across the sky. Others argue that his grief never truly left him, that he remained forever marked by the loss of Phaethon. But maybe, just maybe, that's the point. Maybe Helios didn't need to be healed. Maybe he didn't need to find peace in the traditional sense. Perhaps what he needed was simply to keep going, to keep giving light to the world, even in the face of his own sorrow. And so, as the sun continues its steady path across the sky, as the world continues to turn, Helios moves with it. He rises every day, just as he always has, pulling the chariot and guiding the sun. And perhaps in doing so, he finds a kind of peace, not in forgetting, not in erasing the past, but in continuing despite it, in finding meaning in the journey, no matter how long it takes. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not to conquer your grief, but to live with it, to rise with it, day after day, until you find that there is light even in the darkest places. And so, as the chariot of the sun continues its journey across the sky, Helios moves with it, an eternal passenger in the cycle of time. Each day feels the same, yet it is different, always colored by the weight of his memories, by the grief that still lingers in his heart. The earth, once again thriving beneath the warm light of the sun, carries on with its endless rhythm. Yet, for Helios, no amount of time or distance can erase what has passed. Phaethon's fall has marked him in ways that even immortality cannot undo. But here's the thing. Maybe Helios doesn't need to forget. Maybe the real power isn't in forgetting the past, but in continuing to live with it. Imagine that for a moment, the endless passage of time, the infinite sky, and yet the weight of one moment stays with you, shaping everything you do, everything you are. It's not that Helios is trapped in his grief. He's simply learning to carry it. Every sunrise he brings, every moment of light he gives, is tinged with both sorrow and a quiet redemption. It's a paradox, isn't it? That even in the depths of grief, there can still be a kind of grace. The pain does not disappear, but it doesn't consume you either. It becomes a part of the journey, and maybe that's the lesson here, that the gods, despite their immortality and their grandeur, are not above suffering. They are not above the mistakes that come from love, pride, or arrogance. Even they must reckon with their choices, face the consequences, and learn to live with the weight of their actions. But there's something profoundly human in that, isn't there? In the fact that Helios, despite being the sun god, despite wielding unimaginable power, must in the end learn to forgive himself. Or perhaps more importantly, learn to live with himself. Historians, those who have pondered Helios' fate for centuries, still debate whether he truly found peace. Some say he reconciled with his grief, understanding that it was part of who he was, now an inextricable piece of his immortal existence. Others argue that his sorrow, though softened over time, never fully faded. Perhaps, though, the answer lies somewhere in between. Perhaps Helios, like us all, learned that peace doesn't come from erasing the past. It comes from accepting it, carrying it with you, and allowing it to shape the path forward. There's a quiet majesty in that acceptance. As Helios rises each day, guiding the sun with the same hands that once caused destruction, he does so with a new understanding. He knows that no god, no mortal, can escape the consequences of their choices. And that, in itself, is the true burden of immortality. The knowledge that, no matter how far you go, the past will always be a part of you. But instead of resisting it, instead of letting it crush him, Helios has learned to move with it. He has learned that grief, though it weighs heavy on the heart, does not have to define you. It can be woven into the fabric of your existence, giving it depth and meaning. And so, the chariot continues to move, and Helios with it. He is not the same god he once was. The light he gives may not burn as bright as it did before, but it still burns. The sun still rises, still sets, and still carries the world through its cycles. The earth, thriving below him, is a reminder that, despite the mistakes of the past, there is still hope for renewal. Life continues, and with it, the possibility of redemption. Even for gods like Helios, historians will continue to debate whether Helios ever truly overcame his grief. Some will say he found peace in the light he shared with the world. Others will argue that he remained forever marked by the loss of Phaethon. But maybe the truth is this: Helios' story is not one of perfect peace or flawless redemption. It's a story of struggle, of learning to live with the weight of love and loss, and of finding a way to continue even when the path is unclear. Helios, the sun god, has become more than just the bringer of light. He has become a symbol of endurance, of the quiet strength that comes from accepting the burdens we carry. And maybe, just maybe, that is the most divine thing about him. That even in the face of the greatest loss, he continues to rise, carrying with him the light of the world. As the days blend together, each one a mirror of the last, Helios continues his journey across the sky. It's a journey that never ends, not for him. The sun rises, the world below is bathed in light, and life carries on just as it always has. But for Helios, the light he gives now feels different. It carries more than just warmth. It carries weight. Weight from the love he lost, weight from the sun he failed to protect, weight from the promise he could never keep. But even in the face of this unrelenting grief, something else begins to emerge in Helios. There's a shift, subtle but undeniable, in the way he moves. For all the sorrow that still lies within him, there's a quiet resilience, a sense of resolve that was once absent. The sun, though still a source of power, has become something more, a way for Helios to keep his son's memory alive. Every sunrise, every golden blaze that fills the sky, is a testament to Phaethon, a quiet honor to the child who once yearned to be as mighty as his father. Helios begins to understand something he hadn't before, that love does not always fade, that it does not always dissipate with time. It becomes a part of you. It becomes woven into the fabric of who you are. And in that love, even when it is tinged with grief, there is power, there is strength, there is purpose. The light that Helios now brings to the world is more than just a physical act. It is an act of remembrance, an act of grace. The earth, thriving beneath the warmth of the sun, has healed, yes. The cities that were once burned to the ground have been rebuilt. The rivers that boiled in Phaethon's wake have returned to their natural course. And the world, in its infinite cycle, continues. But for Helios, there's a quiet recognition that, though the earth may heal, the scars of his past will always be with him. They will always be a part of him. And that's not something he can change. But he doesn't need to. Because in the scars, there is meaning. In the grief, there is redemption. Historians still wonder whether Helios ever found peace, whether he ever truly came to terms with what happened. Some say that he found a way to forgive himself, that in time, the grief softened, and he was able to see the light again. Others argue that Helios' heart never truly healed, that the loss of Phaethon remained with him for all eternity. But perhaps it's neither of these things. Perhaps Helios' peace isn't found in the absence of grief, but in the acceptance of it. The acceptance that, no matter how much you wish things could be different, the world continues, and so must you. As he moves through the sky, Helios carries his grief, yes. But he also carries something else, a quiet understanding that grief doesn't have to be a prison. It doesn't have to keep you trapped in the past. The world may move on, but that doesn't mean you must forget. It means that you can still find meaning in what you've lost, that you can still offer something of yourself to the world, even when you're broken. Helios has learned that, perhaps more than anything else. And so, each day, the sun rises, bringing with it not just light, but the quiet strength of a god who has learned to live with his past. Every sunrise is a gift, not just to the world below, but to Helios himself. It is a reminder that even in the darkest of times, even in the face of immense loss, life continues. And in that continuation, there is hope. The earth may have healed, but so too has Helios, in his own way. Not in the way that mortals heal, not in the way that time erases pain, but in a way that is uniquely divine. The sun may still set every evening, but each time it rises again, it is a new beginning. A new chance to carry the light, not just for the world, but for the memory of the one he lost. And perhaps that is the greatest redemption of all, the ability to rise, even when you don't think you can. The ability to give light, even when your heart is heavy. To move forward, even when the past refuses to let go. Helios' story is not one of perfect peace, nor is it one of flawless redemption. It is a story of a God who learned to carry his grief and his love, and in doing so, found the strength to continue. Because in the end, that's all any of us can do, isn't it? Move forward, carry the light, and remember those we've lost. And so, the sun rises again, and again, and again. There's a certain stillness in the heavens as Helios completes his eternal task. The sun continues its tireless journey across the sky, and for a brief moment, Helios is more than the sun god. He is a father, a god who has learned the deepest, most painful truth of existence, that love, no matter how deeply felt, often comes with consequences. That the weight of your decisions will sometimes ripple across the world in ways you cannot predict. And in that understanding, there's no perfect peace. But there is something profoundly human about it, something that transcends the realms. Of gods and mortals alike. Imagine standing at the edge of eternity, where the sun blazes overhead. You can feel the heat, you can see the bright colors staining the sky as the chariot moves through its path. Every horizon Helios crosses is one more reminder of the past, one more moment of reflection. And yet, as much as the sun is a force of creation and light, it is also a force of destruction. This duality has followed Helios for so long. He brings light, but that light can burn. He gives life, but sometimes that life comes with a heavy cost. Phaethon's death is not something Helios can undo. The gods have tried to comfort him in their way. Zeus has spoken to him, trying to explain that the death of his son was not a punishment, but a consequence of fate. Some gods have told Helios that grief is the price of love, and while it's true, those words never seem to offer the solace he needs. Helios, in his quiet wisdom, knows that his grief is not something that will fade with time. It will never go away, not entirely. But over time, he's come to understand that maybe it doesn't need to. Maybe the sorrow will always be with him, a part of who he is, just as the light of the sun is part of him. He is both the giver of warmth and the bringer of pain. Still, there's a beauty in Helios' resilience. Even as the burden of his son's death weighs heavily on him, he rises each day, bringing light to the earth. His chariot continues to sail across the sky, just as it always has. And perhaps in the very act of giving that light, Helios finds something like redemption. He may never undo the past. He may never be able to wipe away the grief, but he can continue to shine. He can continue to offer warmth, to give life, even as his heart remains fractured. The earth, for its part, continues to thrive. New life sprouts from the soil, cities grow taller, and rivers flow once more. The scars that were left behind from Phaethon's reckless ride are still there, but they are not the defining feature of the world. The world moves forward, as it always does, despite the pain that has shaped it. Helios knows that the earth, in its eternal cycle, has healed. But for him, healing is something different. It's not about forgetting, and it's not about fixing. It's about acceptance. And in that acceptance, there's a quiet peace, a peace that comes not from the absence of grief, but from the courage to live with it, day after day. Historians still argue over whether Helios ever truly found peace. Some say that after centuries of mourning, he finally reached a place of acceptance, a place where the grief no longer consumed him. Others believe that the weight of Phaethon's death never fully lifted from his soul. But maybe that's not the point. Maybe the truth is that Helios, like all of us, has found a way to continue. The gods are not immune to the weight of their choices, the consequences of their actions. And though Helios may have made a mistake, though he has lost more than anyone could imagine, he has also found a way to rise again. Each day, he rises. And each day, he gives light to the world below. In that, there is a lesson for all of us. Life is not always about erasing our pain or running from our grief. It's about finding the strength to keep moving forward, even when the past continues to weigh us down. For Helios, the light he shares with the world is a testament to that strength. The sun may rise and set, just as it always has, but it rises a little differently now. It rises with the memory of Phaethon, with the love that was lost, and with the knowledge that the greatest power lies in endurance. And so the journey continues. The chariot moves across the sky, the horses galloping with the same steady rhythm as they have for eons. And Helios, the sun god, moves with them, his heart carrying the memory of his son, his grief and his love, woven into the very fabric of the sun he drives across the heavens. It is not the perfect peace that he once longed for, but it is peace. Nonetheless, a peace born of understanding, acceptance, and the quiet strength that comes with living, despite the pain. As the sun sets and the world below is bathed in twilight, Helios knows that the journey will never truly end. The sun will rise again tomorrow, as it always does. And so will he. For he is both the light and the shadow, the giver and the taker, the Father who lost and the God who continues to shine. And with that, the sun sets for another day. Helios' chariot, now descending into the horizon, seems to fade with the same quiet grace as the god himself. The world below, once again bathed in the fading glow of twilight, slips into the quiet of the night. Yet, as the stars take their place, there's something timeless about the way the sky still holds the memory of the sun, just as Helios will forever carry the memory of Phaethon. The loss, the love, the guilt, and the acceptance all are part of the eternal dance between light and dark. It's strange, isn't it? How the world keeps spinning, how life continues, even when everything seems lost. There's something reassuring about that. The way the earth heals, the way the stars continue to shine, and the way Helios, despite his sorrow, rises each day. We may never understand all the intricacies of fate, of love, of grief, but there's one thing we know for sure: we carry on. We keep moving, and somehow, despite it all, we find the strength to continue. For Helios, the journey is eternal. He may never be free from the weight of his choices, but he has learned to live with them. The sun rises and sets, day after day, a reminder that no matter how dark the night, the light always returns. And so, just as the world finds its rhythm, Helios too finds his. Not in the absence of pain, but in the quiet acceptance of it. The chariot moves forward, the horses gallop through the heavens, and the sun rises again. And as it does, you can't help but feel a little comforted. Maybe, in the grand scheme of things, it's not about finding perfection. Maybe it's about moving forward, about living with the things that shape us, and finding meaning even in the most painful of circumstances. So, with the soft hum of the night settling in around you, take a deep breath. Close your eyes and let the warmth of the day, the quiet of the night, and the wisdom of Helios' journey seep into your soul. There's peace to be found in the rhythm of life, in the acceptance of what is, and the quiet strength to continue, no matter what comes next. Now, dim the lights, perhaps turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let the world fade into the peaceful embrace of sleep. And when you awaken, remember that, like the sun, you too can rise again.